Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this discussion about 5G. We're going to be talking about 5G, the role that MediaTek is playing, the role that Vodacom is playing, and we are joined by Rami Osman, who's the Director for Corporate Sales and Marketing at MediaTek Middle East and Africa, Davide Tacchino, who's the Vodacom Terminals Managing Executive, and 5G is a fascinating technology. Now, for those of you who don't know, 5G is the fifth generation wireless technology, and it basically can provide higher speeds, lower latency, greater capacity than the 4G networks we are using, or most of us are using right now, and the technical side of it, and it's got greater capacity than 4G LTE networks. Now, we're going to be talking about the benefits of 5G connectivity, MediaTek's 5G products and what they are doing, and their plans to bring 5G to every business and consumer through mobile, through home, through automotive. And remember, 5G is not just about your mobile phone, right? It's used in factories because of the latency. It's used in the Internet of Things that we talk about. When you talk about autonomous driving, 5G is going to be the most critical component of making sure that vehicles are able to drive. And that's because of those latency speeds and the high speeds that the information is able to bounce off. Now, it's interesting, this report by the Mobile Economy says that in sub-Saharan Africa, 5G connections will reach 3% of the total across sub-Saharan Africa. This is by 2025. Now, that translates to nearly 30 million mobile 5G connections. Now, when you look at the global picture, by 2025, 5G connections will make up 20% of the total number of mobile connections, with an estimated 1.7 billion connections. This is according to this mobile report. Now, to give you a little bit of context about how fast this technology is, because it's mind-blowing. I remember being at Vodacom World watching the first test of 5G in South Africa, and to give you an idea, it takes 22 minutes to download a high-definition movie on a 4G network right now. It'll take you 32 seconds to do the same on a 5G network. Davide, good morning to you. I mean, Vodacom certainly being the pioneers in 5G, and you guys are rolling out a lot of 5G at the moment, and the impact is going to be massive on consumers and businesses in South Africa.
Yes. Good morning, Rami. And first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to share our view, ideas, and plans on 5G. You are right. We started, Vodacom was the first network to launch 5G mobile connectivity in South Africa in 2020, and the first to launch 5G on the continent in Lesotho in 2018. We have other markets with 5G, as an example, Kenya with Safaricom. If we look at our numbers in South Africa, Vodacom already has more than 500,000 customers using 5G device and network. So the growth trend is clearly there. If you compare this number with your 3% to be achieved in 2025, we are already at 1.5%. So we see a big trend in terms of 5G adoptions. As you said, there is a gap between Africa and Europe, 3% against 20% in a few years' time. We are trying to address working on spectrum, on frequencies, and working on device affordability.
Fantastic. Now, Rami, I want you to tell us about MediaTek, because you know what, people have a phone in their hands, they're using a technology, but what's inside is what's making the 5G happen. I mean, tell us about MediaTek firstly, and the MediaTek 5G products that you are bringing to South Africa.
So firstly, it's a great pleasure to talk to you, Aki, and very happy to always catch up with Davide, and hope that all our listeners in South Africa are keeping well and safe in these days. MediaTek has been around and operating in South Africa for years now, but our headquarters is in Taiwan. And Taiwan, as you know, or maybe a lot of people know, because what's happening in the shortage of the chipset globally, it's in the center of the news. So we are one of the world's largest suppliers of chipsets for different electronic devices. I would say almost a fifth of all consumer electronic devices have some MediaTek chipset inside. This chipset may be a CPU, like a processor, or a central processing unit, or it could be a GPU, or a 3G modem, 4G modem, now 5G modem, USB, Bluetooth, power management chip, TV chip, Wi-Fi chip. And our role has been now more important to the lives of people, because especially after COVID, I mean, unfortunately, the people are losing a lot of their, normal habits. So we are resorting to the technology to keep, seeing each other as we are doing now, So MediaTek has, the biggest business for MediaTek is the mobile phone business. So it's almost for our revenue last year. And we keep developing that. So we have anything in Africa from the 2G, the legacy keypad 2G phone. It's still selling in Africa, and 3G and 4G. And now we're cooperating with our partners like Vodacom and handset manufacturers to bring it to market. And we have other business units also, bringing the products in Wi-Fi, as I said. So that's our second largest. And new areas like IoT and artificial intelligence. So in a nutshell, as I said, we are in the silicon business. We design and we develop chipset for the consumer electronics. We're everywhere, not only mobility, Wi-Fi, IoT, and we're trying to be relevant for Africa. So I think that's very important. Otherwise, you would have not arranged this call with us now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I want to talk about Africa to both you and Davide, because I mean, I've just come back from Dubai. I was at this GITEX conference, and everyone was talking about connectivity in Africa and the big boom that's going to come. And you look at the amount of data centers. There's going to be such a demand for people to use these technologies on their devices, whether it's gaming, whether it's business, whether it's IoT. I mean, there's just this massive boom heading our way. But Rami, I mean, you touched on the technologies, and I mean, MediaTek being in Taiwan, I've been following your organization with a great deal of interest. I mean, you guys spend a lot of money on R&D, and are you able to tell us a little bit about the chipset itself and what it actually means for 5G adoption? Because MediaTek has had a massive focus on 5G adoption. But it's not only that. I mean, the perception with 5G is that the handsets are expensive and it's a big jump for users, which is not necessarily the case. So tell us about the R&D and the actual chipset and what you're doing to lower the costs.
So the chipset is a set of chips. The central chip is the processing unit. But you can say that, for example, the second one is the GPU, and you have other peripheral chipset. But in a mobile phone, the most important is the modem. And this is the chip that connects the phone to the cellular towers that Davide's team would be deploying around the country in South Africa, in Kenya, Ethiopia, etc. So this modem is changing with every generation. Okay, so the CPUs are getting faster, GPUs more powerful, Bluetooth going to version 5, 5.2. But the most complicated change in this decade would be the move of the modem from 3G, 4G to 5G, because 5G is such a revolution. Actually, LTE is long-term evolution because it was evolution on 3G, but 5G is totally different. And the complexity of the modem and what we call the front end, the radio signaling between the phone and the tower is, as you just said now, is mind-blowing. And you have to keep the battery life. Can you imagine? So it's so difficult to keep in the same price segment without heating problem and with conserving the battery life. We're focusing a lot on that. And I think, if you compare to what we did in 4G, we may be doing better. So quickly, almost from the outset, you're going to see, relatively affordable devices in 5G. And that's our main focus for Africa.
Fantastic. Davide, it's a very interesting collaboration that yourselves at Vodacom have with MediaTek. And I guess it's in everyone's interest, right, to grow the 5G technology. I mean, that is the future. Ultimately, this is where we are going to be. Tell us about this collaboration between Vodacom South Africa and MediaTek.
Yeah, we are working very strictly on several products, really to drive down the cost of 5G devices and make them more affordable. 5G devices, you are right, they are still perceived elite technology, but we see positive trends in terms of price erosion, which is happening faster than in the past for 4G devices. The rollout of 5G in countries like China, United States, South Korea, many European countries is also helping to achieve the right economy of scale to drive 5G prices down. And therefore, also thanks to MediaTek chipset, we are seeing the introduction of cost-effective 5G enabled smartphones in the mid-tier segment already, and not only in the top iconic tier price points. To share some numbers, we currently purchase 5G devices in the $200 cost range. Then you have to add, obviously, import duties, logistic, VAT, margins, exchange rate, which is not going towards the right direction, you know. So 5G devices are sold in South Africa in the 4,500 to 5,000 price range. Predicting the prices in this economic and market context is very difficult because the exchange rate is extremely volatile, and you know, the COVID-19 pandemic effects are boosting component prices and logistic cost. Nevertheless, let's be optimistic. We already see the MediaTek chipset really helping some manufacturers to produce and distribute affordable 5G device. And we always monitor all the efforts from manufacturers to reduce the price. So we hope that 5G devices could reach 3,500 price point in 1 year time, which means circa 20% price erosion, which will be a very, very good, important result to drive 5G adoption in South Africa.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, do those numbers concur with you as well, Rami? I mean, when you're looking at those price points and the drop in price points, and I guess it's all correlates, right, with the demand that consumers have. I mean, you just have to look at how much more video people are watching, how many more data centers are going up. So there's a massive demand for high-speed connectivity where people want to consume content on their mobile devices. They want to integrate 5G into their homes, into their businesses. And I guess that price point that Davide was talking about is quite mouth-watering when you talk about the price coming down so much. Is it a fair assumption?
I think what Davide is saying is realistic. It's now. I don't know how they're able to do this. I think there's a lot of sacrifice because the cost of shipping has skyrocketed and the cost of components has increased last year, despite whatever optimization we are trying to do. Optimization in the roadmap, for example. So we're trying to streamline the roadmap so that we, kind of focus on less number of chipset, for example, less number of projects with the partners so that we both benefit. We and the manufacturer, we end up with a more better design in terms of cost. But still, things are outside our control, certain things. And that means certain sacrifices from everybody. I think people like Davide are every day looking at that. How can they keep the customer away from the shock? The supply shock was a huge. Now, looking forward, there's the optimistic and the pessimistic view. The pessimistic view is that there will be continuation of the supply and logistic problems going forward. I think some people would like to do that if they're maybe manipulating, I don't know. They have their own means, but practically we are working in MediaTek on a daily basis, actually, to kind of get out of the 2020 era. So it's like a movie or a nightmare.
Yeah, no,
We're
listen.
trying to finish.
It's been incredibly challenging. I mean, you just look at, I listened to both of you just talking about logistics. I mean, every single industry's been affected. And you look at the chip shortages globally and how it's like affecting the smallest devices. But I mean, the reality, gents, is that, I mean, people are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel by, say, 2023. Once that happens and the supply of chipsets has improved, which it should improve by then, and of course the cost of logistics, because it's, boy oh boy, it's like sky high for anybody at the moment, but I guess that will resolve itself. But once we have all those costs coming down, there could be massive growth of 5G in South Africa, Davide. I mean, I see you nodding your head there, but ultimately, once we get to that price point, 5G could drive inclusive growth in South Africa and across sub-Saharan Africa. It has the potential to change people's lives.
Yeah, I fully agree, Aki. But it has to be a value chain industry play. The 5G revolution in Africa is happening, it's true. And as I said, Vodacom has more than 500,000 customers already using 5G services and smartphones. The trend is there, but it needs the effort and support from all the actors and players involved in the industry value chain to accelerate and, as you said, really change people's lives. We need manufacturers like MediaTek to bring 5G technology costs down, leveraging on new and innovative solutions. We need the help of logistic suppliers because now logistic is a bottleneck. Vodacom as an operator will invest and we have ambitious network coverage plan. We also need, as an industry, more frequencies released to deploy efficient and top-performing 5G network. To expedite South Africa economic recovery post-pandemic and to ensure that South Africa is not left behind in the fourth industrial revolution, spectrum allocation needs to be urgently addressed. We know there should be a tender in March. Let's really hope it will happen to assign new frequencies and to allow us to really provide the best 5G solution and service for our customers.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure, Rami, that you must be seeing this same growth in other regions. I mean, South Africa falls under your portfolio, but you've got Middle East, you've got Africa. I mean, Dubai, for example, and in Egypt, I've seen exceptional growth of 5G technology. I mean, the revolution of 5G is happening already in these countries.
I would say Gulf countries are naturally higher ASP, average selling price. So 5G penetration is almost everywhere, above the $200 segment, as Davide was saying. So you cannot buy any 4G device no more than $200. They're squeezed under that segment. There are still people who will try to go for them. But just I want to touch again on the point you're saying of 2023. Why 2023? Because silicon, I mean, people may not understand the complexity of the manufacturing. I mean, it costs more than $10 billion, to set up a facility, and it might take 3 years to build it. And only, like 2 or 3 countries in the world have the technology to do that. So the problem happened 2020. So we're looking at 2023 because you need 3 years to set up the capacity. But also we can do reallocation. So MediaTek is, trying really allocating all its, or most, I mean, a lot of its resources towards 5G to help alleviate the issues there. But what's happening, Aki, is that the use cases are developing as we are working to tackle them. So, so the timelines, maybe, shifted. So because the demand for other categories, not other categories in semiconductors are growing, and even our forecasts for 5G are not necessarily accurate. So you talked about Africa 3 or 6%, 3 in sub-Saharan and maybe 6 in South Africa, but we're already seeing, Davide, that the demand is higher, and because there's a lot of dynamics around the spectrum. there's ambiguity.
Yes.
So how can we forecast when there's this big, ambiguous issue?
Yeah.
We are trying our best, but we also would like the regulators and the governments to also think about this point from their side. It needs calculation. The population, the industries need to be supported better. In Gulf countries, for example, the 7 Gulf states here in the Middle East, they've already have set up a steering committee for 5G. I think I've been attending 3 years back, which have leaders from the industry and vertical and spectrum. I think like 3 verticals, and they're discussing and aligning. And without this, the planning would be poor. So I think that's maybe one of my key calls to whoever from the influencers or decision makers in South Africa, if they're hearing this, is that they have to get on and to sit with us and to sit with Davide and do the planning, because otherwise, there will be huge delay in terms of the adoption in Africa, and that will hurt the economy.
No, absolutely. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that the spectrum issue needs to be. I know that the spectrum issue in South Africa, and you and I have had many conversations around this. It's been going on for a long time. You mention the spectrum, and people start sweating and they get very tense about it. But I don't know about you, Davide, but I'm quite confident that there is something that's going to change. Because if what you say doesn't happen in March, then I'm afraid it's going to set us back. But I really have a good feeling that they will resolve this issue, and that spectrum will be allocated. And, it's a critical part of 5G, right? Do you feel the same optimism I do?
Yeah, well, let's cross fingers, touch wood, and be optimistic. In general, I'm also optimistic about Africa and digital inclusion because of a lot of reasons why. In particular, recently also the United Nations has been created a work stream to address terminals affordability. It's a first multi-stakeholder initiative to address the global mobile internet access gap, launched by Vodafone Group and the International Telecommunication Union under the umbrella of the United Nations Broadband Commission. In this context, we want really to develop affordable solutions to give 4G and 5G devices in the hands of African population and really drive the 4G and 5G adoption.
Now, Rami, your MediaTek Dimensity range, I've been reading a lot about it. It's got incredible traction globally, and there's various products there. There's the 1200, for example. There's a gaming one as well, and it's just incredible the kind of growth that you've seen with this particular product and what the Dimensity range is doing for MediaTek.
It's very young, and the growth in a couple of years was stunning. I think the first announcement was like end of 2019, maybe not great timing, but since then the adoption has been really satisfying for us and challenging us to expedite the R&D on it. We were known for the Helio range, which is our 4G. And specifically, we did good in gaming in 2018-19 in the mid-range, when we understood that the gamers are mostly, people who cannot afford flagship. So that, epiphany of a moment helped us focus or create that product. So it's a very important, not just to follow the technology, Aki. You need to understand the segment as well. Because if you keep pushing, you may not be relevant. So that's what I was talking earlier. So Dimensity, again, I mean, it's 5G, so no brainer, it should be flagship. Not necessarily, because we have now, 4 billion mobile phones sold globally every year. 4 billion. The last time I checked the number, the feature phones were shrinking, 400 million, maybe 300 million. So that means more than 1.5 billion easily are smartphones. So can all of them be over $700? No. So the Dimensity series is quite big. You start from Dimensity 700, which you can get what Davide is looking for. trying to go below $200. And Samsung, Oppo, Xiaomi, and Tecno, Infinix, and other partners. And then you have the one that we just recently announced and being compared now with the world's top flagship for smartphones. And it's the Dimensity 9000. And it's the
Yes.
world's first chipset using the 4 nanometer. And a lot of first in that chipset. Where you can go to the real flagship territory.
Now, this is exciting stuff. And you just look at how people are consuming media, how they're experiencing and consuming these things on their devices. And aside from that, the content creators, the software that you're using and the apps that you're using on your phones are quite demanding. You need to have the power to be able to deliver and experience what you want to experience on your phone. And you look at the size of the cameras, for example, how they are improving dramatically. And ultimately, you got to have the hardware to be able to use all of these technologies. And the content creators that are editing on their devices it's amazing. It's amazing watching what people are creating and what they're uploading and how they're consuming all these media. Certainly 5G is going to be exciting. Undoubtedly, we have to unlock this value for consumers, for businesses. Davide, in closing, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Rami, what is the most exciting part of 5G for you? What excites you the most about 5G?
Well, I think that in my view, due to its very, very fast speed, 5G is playing a pivotal, a key role in all the use cases boosted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Remote working, remote education, remote healthcare, remote entertainment services will be massively improved and delivered leveraging on 5G technologies and capabilities. And in particular, 5G could really help to bring high-speed connectivity in the rural areas where fiber is not present, contributing to reduce the digital divide and increase digital inclusion. And last but not least, if we think about healthcare services and in particular telemedicine, 5G could really change the scenario, change the scene, and allow important and strong healthcare services also in rural areas and for disadvantaged communities. So
Rami, from your point,
this is what really excites. This is what really excites me a lot about 5G. The contribution of 5G to increase digital inclusion.
Things like healthcare, Davide, I've seen, case scenarios of, remote healthcare. It's incredible what 5G, it is game changing. It will change people's lives. Rami, you must be seeing some interesting things. What excites you the most about 5G?
David didn't leave much for me. He covered pretty well, but being a technology person, something that people may not understand when moving between 4G to 5G. 5G in the US is being called cable cutter sometimes. So, like what you get from the mobile connectivity in 3G and 4G was limited by caps. And that's because of the capacity. Instead of 5 gigahertz in 3G or 5 megahertz in 3G or 20 megahertz, usually the width of the band of frequency that you get in 4G, 5G starts at 100. And that means that the promise of, virtually unlimited monthly usage may be attained. And that means that your relationship with your mobile phone and your mobile router or fixed router at home may be much more better. So that, like the worry about the data consumption may be getting, less. And the operator would be able to maybe preserve the old pricing, but give you more data. That's because of the spectrum, the nature of the higher spectrum and more bandwidth. In mobile, that's definitely, understood by everybody who control their monthly package. In fixed broadband, that's even maybe more important because fixed broadband impacts economy and education. And the mobile router is a finite resource, because it has a monthly package that is expensive and very precious. And optical networks are not everywhere, especially in some countries, like in the region I cover, Middle East and Africa. And certainly a broadband via optical is an issue. So how can we get the fixed broadband access to be really reliable alternative to copper, fast copper, and definitely ultra fast, fiber? So 5G may fulfill that promise, and we are working with Vodacom now on looking for some home indoor outdoor routers and even some business routers as well. So I'm interested in the value for the economy. Second point is the IoT. Again, what I'm trying to say is the 2 points that maybe the consumer doesn't know about. IoT is still using 2G to a great extent, and that is disaster for the operators because they want to slowly, gradually, remove that from the network because the operating expenses are high, and for other reasons as well, leverage the spectrum for other things. But 3G and 4G did not yet offer the magical solution that will replace the good old GSM, connections. And Africa needs a lot of IoT. In solar, some solar projects in East Africa, some agriculture projects in South Africa. I've been seeing, a lot of entrepreneurs winning awesome ideas, prizes for awesome ideas, but we need to give them the right cellular technology for IoT. And 5G, now one of the standard, definitions, we'll talk about IoT. So that means you could get like years of battery life for a remote connection if you're monitoring something does not have power connection. And that means we can really then connect, reach the billion of connections. So there's a talk about IoT. It was not fulfilled in 4G. We're looking to 5G to define well the new protocols for low power, wide area network IoT and to industrialize it properly, which will help the people and the economies of Africa.
Wow, lots to look forward to. Very exciting, and I mean the difference that connectivity makes to an economy. For example, when you open it up and the cost comes down, and people are able to get onto this digital highway that we're talking about, this fourth industrial revolution that you've both been talking about. 5G certainly is going to be one of those technologies that is going to drive this incredible change. Look forward to the impact that 5G will be having in the years to come. Rami Osman, Director of Corporate Sales and Marketing at MediaTek for Middle East and Africa. Davide Tacchino, Vodacom Terminals Managing Executive. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the discussion around 5G. I'm looking forward to having a discussion with you again in a year from now, where we will look back and we say this progress that's been made, and the targets have moved significantly higher than what we expected by 2025. I have a feeling that might happen. Thank you for your time, gents.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.